Valorie Kondos Field is a US college coaching legend, voted as the Pac-12 Coach of the Century, a UCLA Coaching Hall of Famer, a seven-time national champion across a remarkable 29 years as the head gymnastic coach at UCLA, despite having no background at all in the sport of gymnastics. Her TED Talk, Why Winning Doesn't Always Equal Success, has been viewed more than 4 million times, renowned for her extraordinary leadership and her coaching mantra to develop champions in life through sport. Valerie, it's a great pleasure to meet you today. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Luke, so much. I appreciate it.
It's an extraordinary life that you've lived. And when you listen to some of those achievements back that I just read out, what are you proud of most?
All of it, honestly. It never ceases to amaze me how did it all happen? And I know how it happened because I speak about it all the time. But when I think about I had my entire adult career in the world of athletics, and I did not grow up in the world of athletics. And then I was able to achieve success, sustained success for 3 decades. Uh, I literally sometimes just shake my head and go, how did that happen? But then because I speak about it and I teach about it so much, I know how it happened.
Can we go back to the first few years as coach? And you describe yourself as tough and testy and at times maybe even nasty. You were close to giving it all away. Can you tell us about that time?
Yeah, I was asked to be the head coach in the late 80s. And this was the time when, in my mind, a leader, a strong leader, had all the answers, didn't have to ask anybody for their opinion. It was black and white. And as a coach, if you don't like it, go find another team. And I felt that if I showed any signs of weakness, meaning humility, vulnerability, even an apology as to what I didn't know, that I wouldn't have the command that I needed as a head coach. And so I literally just acted like what I thought a head coach should be. And thankfully, we did absolutely horribly as a team.
And Valerie, that was the generation really. I grew up playing professional sport in that era where your coaches did crazy things. They said crazy things to you. And if you couldn't cope, bad luck, someone else can. And there was no other way really. And so I think that's what's remarkable about your story is that you did completely change paradigm and find a way. And it took a number of your students and your athletes to come to you and sit you down and say, we don't like our sport under you as coach. That's a pretty confronting day. Can you tell us about how that
Yeah,
unfolded?
yeah, I remember that so clearly. They asked me for a team meeting, and I was like, "Oh, I love team meetings. Yeah, let's talk." And one by one, they went around the room and they gave me examples that were absolutely true of how my coaching style was hurtful and demeaning, and it made them feel less than. It didn't support them, and they would say to me, I mean, this was like 1991, maybe 92, but I remember it so clearly because I'm just tapping into something right now. I talk about quite often the importance as a leader to hone your listening skill. And I think one reason why I remember it so clearly is because I remember sitting in that room and willing myself to be still and to really stop the dialogue in my brain of all of my excuses as to why I did this and I never said it like that and but you did that, which is why I had to say that. But I remember sitting there and just willing myself, my brain to be still so I could really hear them. And thank you for this. I just had this aha moment. I hadn't thought about that before. And so it was very, very clear to me. Okay, what do I want them to feel less than? Do I want to be pushing them down? As, these young, vibrant, talented, smart women? No. So either figure out a different way, or quit and let somebody else do it.
And then it takes incredible skill and will to change paradigm. And a lot of people have that thought and think, I should do this a better way. But then under pressure, we go back to our old habits. And I suppose that is the intersection of your incredible friendship, as it turned out, with the legendary Coach John Wooden. And for the audience that don't know about Coach Wooden, won 10 national basketball championships in 12 seasons, 7 in a row. No other team had won more than 4 in a row, or never has before or since. He won an incredible 88 consecutive games as coach, but he became an incredible mentor for you. Can you tell everyone about how that came about?
Well, it came about because I had not met Coach Wooden yet, and I was on my way to resign. And I was walking through our student union and walking through the bookstore. And I don't have the book here, it's in my living room, but I happened upon a book of Coach Wooden, his leadership book. And I just literally opened it up like this. And it opened up to his definition of success. And I thought, well, you know what? He won 10 national championships. He was hailed as the greatest coach of any sport that ever lived. What does he say about winning? And I read success is peace of mind and knowing that you've done your best. And I kept flipping through the pages because I was like, this made no sense to me. This is like a Hallmark card. Success is peace of mind and knowing you've done your best. Oh, that's nice. And I thought, where is he going to talk about winning? Coaches are hired to win. We're not hired to be mentors or second moms or dads or your pal. We're hired to win. So he must talk about winning. And I kept going through the pages and I kept coming back to his definition of success. And when I read it enough times and read it slowly, success is peace of mind in knowing you have done your best. I had the biggest aha moment of my professional career. I had not been trying to be my best. I had been trying to be somebody else. And I started connecting all the proverbial dots. Whenever you try to be somebody else, you will always be a second rate them. I will never be as good at somebody being them as they are being them. And what I learned later on in my years, when I tried to be Coach Wooden, that was equally as bad because I was never going to be as good as Coach Wooden at being Coach Wooden. And the worst part that happens is when you try to be somebody else or even like somebody else, it prevents you from truly developing into a first-rate you. And so I didn't resign. I went back to my office and I thought, what do I bring to the table as a head coach of a UCLA gymnastics team? And our sport is called artistic gymnastics. I grew up in the world of ballet. There was a lot of points given to artistry in our sport. What do I bring? Well, you know what? I can teach the artistry and movement quality and choreograph better than anybody else that's coaching gymnastics in this country. I'm going to do that. So that was the technical for me. And then I had to start thinking about, though, the bigger picture was I just really did not buy into this world of athletics where it was all about winning because it seemed really silly to me that athletics was all about being able to say, ha ha, we beat you. Ha ha, I beat you today. Ha ha, my team's better than your team. It's like how many gazillions of dollars are spent every year on athletics? There has to be more to athletics than ha ha, we beat you. So what is that? And then it became really clear. Once I got the noise out of haha, we beat you and winning, 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 then I understood athletics is a masterclass in teaching really, really, really tough life lessons you don't learn in a classroom. Athletics teaches us about resilience and perseverance and how to fall and get back up. Athletics teaches us about being a part of team, something greater than yourself. Athletics teaches you all those things you do not learn in math and English and history and science. And I was like, oh my gosh, I could do this. I'm going to help my student athletes become champions in life through sport. And my classroom is the gym. And I remember going to my athletic director and I remember saying, okay, I got this, but I'm not focusing on winning. I'm going to focusing on developing every single one of my student athletes into the best superhuman superhero they can be. And because I was at UCLA and because I could recruit talent, I knew that that would translate to the competition floor. And guess what? It did. And we started winning.
It's such a brilliant, clear mission, isn't it? Create champions
Hmm.
in life through sport. It makes
Hmm.
perfect sense when you say it. And then the success flowed from there. And I encourage everyone, if you haven't listened to Valerie's TED Talk, go and do it. It's brilliant. And the title is Why Winning Doesn't Always Equal Success. And you gave a really great answer of that. Can you maybe lean on that a little bit more of why there is much more to it than just reading out the highlights at the end, the seven-time national champion? Can you tell us why there's more meaning behind it?
Because winning is finite. Winning is one moment. Winning is a ring. Winning is a trophy. Winning is that moment in time. But it's everything that you develop to be able to achieve that success that lasts beyond the win. And so when you truly are thinking of your adventure into becoming the best athlete that you can be, you're developing all of those traits and characteristics that I just listed for you. And when you stop playing, you still carry those into everything you do in life, into your family, into your next job, into whatever you want to do. Those characteristics don't leave you just because you're no longer an athlete or a coach. And so it was really fun for me to keep connecting these dots and realizing that if I'm going to choose to coach this way, to teach gymnastics and coach and motivate this way, I had to walk my talk, because you can't help someone develop into a better version of themselves by dictating orders. You have to figure out how to motivate them to want to get that 1% better each day, to want to see the goal. Even if we've won a national championship, how can we do it better tomorrow? Not waiting for the next national championship, but tomorrow. And when you do that, you start instilling all of those traits and strengths into yourself, and you become a champion in life yourself.
I love you used the word dictate there, and a line of yours that I really love. You can dictate your way to a win or a championship, but you can't dictate your way to success. Can you break that down for us more, because it really rings true?
Yeah. I'm sure that you and your listeners have heard the buzzwords nowadays: transactional versus transformational leadership. And a transactional leader, parent, coach, teacher, someone who has influence. A leader is simply someone who has influence over another human being. And a transactional leader is, if you do this, the transaction will be, then you'll get that. If you hit the home run, then you're going to get the pat on the back. If you strike out, you will maybe ignored when you get in the dugout. That is transactional, and it's very evident with a lot of parenting as well. Um, that is dictating. That is authoritative dictatorship. You are holding the power over this person. And they often, as we know this in sport, too many times the athlete is focusing on pleasing the coach instead of figuring out how to get better mentally, emotionally, and physically. And the converse of that, as we say, is transformational leadership. And it's exactly what it sounds like. Like, you think of a transformer, and as a coach, you are helping this person continue to make these micro moment changes and decisions and choices in their lives, which are helping them transform into a greater version of themselves. In fact, later on in my career, when someone would ask me, I remember being on airplanes and people would say, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" Or "Do you work?" or whatever. And I'd say, "Yeah, I develop superheroes." And they would say, "Oh, you work in Hollywood." And I go, "No, I work near Hollywood, but I help young women transform into these superheroes." Because when you think about a superhero isn't jumping over buildings for bragging rights. Batman's not jumping over a building to say, "Haha, Superman, I beat you." They're doing it to help the world be a better place. And that was my goal with our student athletes. So the challenge was how to motivate them to want to make different choices in their lives.
Valerie, one of my favorite sayings is success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And do you subscribe to this? winning coaches have won championships, and we see that in our part of the world in Australia. But what's left is broken relationships and dysfunction at the end. Would you say even with the premierships and the championships, that doesn't equal success?
100%. And that is the underlying theme through my entire TED Talk. When you think about sport, when you think about business, so many of us around the world, we have embraced this win at all cost culture. And when you do that, you can win, you can make a lot of money. But when you embrace that win at all cost culture philosophy, there are casualties. And the casualty isn't a loss. The casualty isn't loss of money. The casualty are humans, mentally, emotionally, and sometimes physically uh, damaged. And that's a daunting responsibility to accept. But if you don't accept it, you're burying your head in the sand. And all you're focusing on is your ego and the end result. To be able to say, ha ha, I won. Ha ha, I beat you. Ha ha, my company made more money than your company.
Valorie, we talk about parenting a lot in these conversations. You mentioned it. I see a generation of parents now obsessed with their kids winning. What advice would you give to them?
A lot. Whenever I'm asked to speak with young adults, gymnasts and all that, I said I'll do it on one condition: if the parents are there. Because if we're just talking to the child about not focusing on winning, but you're going home and the parents are just in your ear constantly and all they're doing is focusing on winning, the child doesn't have a chance. I'm sure you've heard the statistic that 95% of children decide to leave their sport on the car ride home because they're enclosed in this little metal box and they can't get away from the questions. And one of my most favorite people to listen to on podcasts and her books is her name is Dr. Shafali.
I did a podcast with Dr.
Did you?
Shafali, Miss Val, and I encourage people to go back. The conscious parenting expert, and
Yes.
and her language in this is brilliant, isn't it?
Yes.
Why overlay on your kids something you didn't achieve yourself, and trying to live that vicariously through your own kids, and the damage that's done. And you mentioned the conversation in the car. I'm obsessed with that, isn't it? That opportunity to
Yeah.
literally, destroy your kids' love of sport on the way home by comparing them to someone else. Why didn't you play more like Simone Biles? Why didn't you
Right.
achieve more? Or, the answer is we just love watching you play. We just love
Right.
being there for you
Right.
effectively. And it's a great
Right.
conversation. It's through all your leadership that's probably feels like that's been the cornerstone of it.
Yes. When I gave my TED Talk, in part of my TED Talk, I say, as a parent, you'll know if you're focusing on the end result or if you're really truly focusing on helping your child become the best version of themselves by the questions you ask them. And I said, if you're asking questions about the end result, like, did you get an A? How many points did you score? Did you win? You'll know you're really not truly interested in helping them become the best version of themselves. And after my TED Talk, I had a woman come up to me and she said, Miss Val, I have to tell you, I am the stereotypical tiger mom. I was like, okay, well, your words, not my words. Okay. And she said, when you were saying this, do you ask your kids about their grades and if they won? I was nodding my head yes, because I was so proud of myself. And then I realized that's not what I should be asking my kids. I said, you know what? Good for you. Good for you for listening and processing. And she says, I'm going to ask my children different questions from now on. I said, great. Good for you.
And it's a profound thing, isn't it? A real passion of mine with our four kids, and you're watching just the obsessive nature of junior sport, and the kids always get it right. The kids totally understand. They're fair. They like to win, but at the end, they move on really quickly. It's their parents that hang on to
Right.
this, and as you said, the statistics are horrific, aren't they? 95% of kids
Yeah.
lose their love of sport because of
Right.
the conversation in the car with their parents. So I wanted to ask you about Simone Biles, who's transcended your sport
Mm-hmm.
in a way that is hard to imagine. I know you've got an incredibly close relationship. You've produced and choreographed her tour, I
Mm-hmm.
believe, coming up. Can you tell us a bit about her and that once in a lifetime type of athlete that comes along?
She is the once in a lifetime type of athlete. And part of it is she was gifted and born with the perfect physique and physiological attributes to do the sport of gymnastics. Not just physically, muscularly, but mentally as well, to be able to calculate, two twists and two flips and three twists and know where she is in the air and all of that. What I love, first of all, I recruited Simone to UCLA, and she actually signed a national letter of intent with us. And then she went pro. And so she said something in these last Olympics that had NIL been around, she would have competed at UCLA for me. And I was like, oh, dagger to my heart. 7 national champs would have become 10 national championships. Winning, 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 right? But what I love about her journey, and I love sharing with people, is she's not just a one-hit wonder. It's not like she just won the all-around title in 2016 or 2021. She went through, as we all know, a whole mental shift with what we call in our sport the twisties. And she has been really doing a deep dive with her therapist on, I just had it. What's the therapy? The IDM. It's not IMDb, because that's what you look up when you want to find out about someone. It's the therapy. It's the eye therapy that they use to retrain your brain. And as I when we first started rehearsals for the Golden America tour and we were on a break, I said, Simone, I am fascinated by this because you light up when you talk about your therapist and counseling. And what is it that really has resonated with you because you are different than you were 4 years ago? And she said, Miss Val, she says, it's not just going through the gymnastic skills with this. She says, but there's the process of just uncovering the layers of the trauma, and one layer after another after another. And she says, it sounds like it would have been frightening, but it wasn't. It released me of all this pent up tension that I've had for so many years. And for her to be able to share that with the world, she didn't have to do another Olympic Games. She was already the best in the world. She will go down as the GOAT before this last Olympics. But she did because she could, and she wanted to experience it with a different mindset.
Amazing story, isn't it? And as you said, an athlete that has taken your sport to levels very few thought was probably possible, and it would be hard to match that again. I love these conversations with people with unique backgrounds like yours, and we see these patterns of what make great leaders, and yours is an incredible leadership story. Starting with self-leadership, I want to ask the question, what is one way that you fill up your own cup so that you can be the person you want to be?
That's a really great question. I retired when I was 60. And so I think what a lot of us experience, if we thankfully live this long, is you have a career. I had a career that was very structured. And so I didn't really have to think about and plan my day, really. It was planned for me. And then I retire. And even though I do a lot of speaking and a lot of teaching and a lot of this, it's not structured. And I noticed the first few years that I was retired, it wasn't just that I didn't have this identity anymore as the head coach of UCLA Gymnastics, but I didn't have a structure. And so I was sleeping in late. I wasn't getting things done during the day, and I was procrastinating. And I literally would just kind of walk by my bed and go, oh, I'm just going to lay down for a little bit. And I was in this lull, like this sadness and state of depression, it felt like. And I coached myself up, and I was like, okay, walk your talk here. What would you say to someone that told you this? And I'd say, well, the first thing I would say is the night before, figure out your schedule for tomorrow. The second thing I would tell myself is before you get out of bed, I want you to enumerate 3 things that you're really grateful for to get yourself motivated for the day. And then don't wait to be motivated, but just be disciplined to follow your schedule. And part of that schedule is filling in time during that, allotting time in that schedule for stillness. Because a lot of what I'm doing is creatively choreographing, writing another book, speaking engagements. When I do a speaking engagement, I will tailor it to the company whom I'm speaking for, and that takes stillness. And that's something that I think that we're really lacking in our society now, and it's something that we have to be extremely intentional with to get in our days. Um, I teach a course at UCLA, and I teach a class I just started yesterday, actually, at the University of Arkansas. And I love speaking with 20-something-year-olds. And when I ask them, how many of you scroll through social media through the day? They go, all the hands go up. I go, how many of you spend probably too much time scrolling through social? All their hands go up. How many of you are scrolling through social media to numb out? Their hands go up. And then I start asking them, what are you needing to numb out from? The stresses of their days, stresses of school, stresses of friendships, stresses of social media, stresses of sport, stress, stress, stress. I said, so you have all this stress in your brain that you need to numb out from. And by scrolling through social media, you're putting more stuff in your brain. How does that make sense? And they just kind of look at me like, oh, yeah. I said, so hold up your phone. Just hold your phone up. And they all hold up their phone. I said, okay, open your hand. And they're like, I'm not opening my hand. My phone will drop. I'm like, exactly. Your phone is not attached to you. You're attached to your phone. It's a choice.
And I think the stillness that you described there, the pattern I think of the people I speak to the most is they have some sort of practice in that space. You called it
Yep.
stillness, and others mindfulness or meditation. But most people who work it out have got some part of that. And as you said, particularly with the distraction of having that in our hand attached to us all the time, that seems more
Yeah.
and more relevant than ever. What is one thing that's always worked for you as a leader that you would never change?
Love. When I want to just have a really strong conversation with someone and just say, what the hell do you think you're doing? Um, Thankfully, I have grown to the point where I don't allow myself to speak from a place of emotion. And I will back off, and I will think about the situation from a place of love and empathy and compassion. And that, how can I help this person? And through that point of love, understanding that quite often it's what's happening on the surface isn't the issue. It's what's happening below the surface. And we don't know someone else's story. We don't know their trauma. We don't know their triggers. We don't know their history. But in any moment of the day, those things can be triggered. And for me to suppose that I know what someone else is going through is very arrogant. And so I don't do that. I'm very proud that I don't do that. And I can calm myself down to a place of coming from a place of love. And, there's the term of tough love. I don't I don't like the term tough, but I just feel like honesty. To be able to ask permission of someone and just say, I want to have a hard conversation with you, and I'm asking your permission to be 100% honest with you. And once you have that agreement, that's when the magic happens. That's when you really start getting to the heart of the problem. When I was asking some of our student athletes about like the last few years of my career at UCLA, and what are the things that they really remember about our culture that was developed at UCLA Gymnastics, they all will say the one thing that they practiced and learned and wanted to practice was respectful honesty. And I would tell them, I said, if you're not being 100% honest with someone, you're not being respectful, because basically what you're saying is you're not strong enough to handle the truth. And to ask permission to be that honest. And sometimes I would have an athlete say, Miss Val, not today. I can't handle it today. And I'd say, totally understand. Come by my office, or let's go to coffee when you do want to talk about this.
Yeah, beautiful answer. We see people that have success like you've had, sustained success over decades of a really clear vision. I want to ask you a question. Has there been a visionary leader in your life that you felt compelled to follow their vision?
Yes, uh, Coach Wooden and my husband. My husband was our defensive coordinator for football at UCLA, and he's very, very, very much like John Wooden. And very, when we first started dating, so Coach Wood and my husband, they're kind of like this. Okay, they they don't drink, they don't swear, they don't get really hyper emotional a little bit. And when I first started dating Bobby, he gave me a little slip of paper that said, "Be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger." This was like on our second date. I'm like, wow, okay. But as I said earlier, part of what I did that wasn't good is I felt that I wasn't going to be a good person if I didn't act like my husband did. And I talked to him about this at one point, and he said, "No, no, 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 no. You be you. I'm going to be me. You be you. And you're fiery and you're feisty and you're all of that. It's just you get yourself in trouble, me. I get myself in trouble when I cross the line into making it personal with someone." And so I looked back on my coaching career, and I can be honest and forthcoming and fiery and feisty and in your face as long as it is instructional. When it crosses a line to being personal, that's when it was not okay.
A college romance that turned into a lifelong marriage is a great story. That's a brave thing on a second date to say, "Be quick
Ah,
to listen, slow to speak." He's a braver man than most, and for that to have landed well, that's a great story. I love. Thanks for sharing that.
mhm.
Curiosity is a word that we hear all the time in successful leaders. How do you carve out time to be curious, and how do you go about integrating that into your life and your journey?
Oh gosh, almost every moment of the day. And I think that was part of my success when I decided to change my coaching style, which was about, I don't know, 2 years into my being a head coach. I had to ask 100 questions a day because I knew nothing about gymnastics. And so, what we learned, and what I've learned since, is that one of the best ways to teach someone is to give them a little bit of instruction and then let them, quote unquote, fail and just ask them questions. How are you feeling? What were you thinking before? What do you think you should do differently this next time? And I remember student athletes, on bounce beam, when they'd fall and they'd come up to me, they'd say, "Miss Val, what I do wrong?" I'm like, "I have no idea. Let's figure this out. What were you thinking before? Let's watch the video." And I would learn along the way. I think it was just enforced because I said I knew nothing. I am also an extremely curious person. I want to read every single leadership book on the planet before I die. I love asking questions. I have no problem. I don't, I subscribe to the fact that there's no dumb or ignorant question. And so I have no problem humbling myself to say, I have no clue what to do, or I don't know what you're talking about. And it, as a coach, think about this. You know that you're going to have a successful season when the team takes ownership of the team. Well, the best way to do that is to ask them 100 questions about their team culture, their team philosophy, about team accountability, about team agreements. What are those going to look and sound like and feel like? And get them in it instead of dictating them what the rules and the guidelines are going to be. So when I was coaching, the the first day that everybody met, we would go over the student athlete handbook, which were the rules and the guidelines. And if I were coaching today, I would not use the word rules. I would use guidelines and agreements, or standards, guidelines, and agreements, so that it is an agreement and not a rule.
Makes perfect sense. Has there been an example of great collaboration in your life?
Yeah, I love to collaborate. I love to collaborate in everything I do. Uh, when I was coaching, I was very, very lucky to have an athletic department, an athletic director that allowed me to go choreograph for SeaWorld San Diego every year. So the month of May, I would go down to San Diego and I choreographed their summer shows that were like Cirque du Soleil type of shows. And early on, like I didn't have to learn this. This is just kind of like what I knew. I would be choreographing and the facility guys would be walking behind me. And I'd say, hold on, come here. Okay, you guys, performers, do it the first thing I taught you. Okay. Then do the next thing that I just changed. Which do you like better? And it sounds like a weird collaboration, but it was clear to me that I needed to craft something that was going to be appealing, not to somebody who had 2 decades of dance experience behind him, but to the common folk. And so I collaborate with everyone and I love to collaborate and I hate to craft things by myself.
Yeah, brilliant answer. And I love hearing that story. Communication is probably the thing we most commonly hear from people, that they're really understanding of how important that is in any leadership environment. Have you had a mantra when it comes to how you've communicated in your roles?
Yeah. The most important communication skill to hone is listening. And I had a sports psychologist at UCLA who, when we were talking about this, put the word listen up on the board. And then he said the secret to being a good listener is in this word, just rearrange the letters. And so when you rearrange the letters to spell listen, it spells silent. And whenever I share that with people, they go, oh, wow. But to truly listen, I think it's one of the greatest gifts that we can give another human being. But when most of us are listening, pretending like we're listening, we're thinking about what we're going to say next. And I know it takes practice. Once again, the word stillness, to get still so that you're able to truly listen with all of your senses, not just audibly, but how are they saying it? What do they look like? What are their mannerisms? What's the energy they're giving off? That's how you truly listen. And that is the most important communication skill to have, because if you're not listening, then it's just a one-way dialogue. Then you're just waiting for that person to shut up so you can keep talking.
It's a great description. I love the detail you went into there, because you can truly tell when someone's listening, can't you? You
Mm-hmm.
know it instinctively. If you can almost feel their brain ticking over, waiting to interrupt you, or someone, and even sitting across from you, you can just see you're an intent listener. Like you just have got that practice, and I suppose it is a practice. Valerie,
Mm-hmm.
who's been the greatest leader in your life?
My mother. Yeah, she was extremely compassionate. And I love the understanding the difference between empathy and compassion. And empathy is when you feel something with someone, but compassion is when you put an action to it. And so my mother was extremely empathetic to everyone she met, but there was always an action toward it that was very compassionate.
Yeah, beautiful to hear, and I love it when someone has a family member or a parent in their life, and that immediately comes to mind. We're a bit obsessed with collaboration and bringing great leaders together around the globe in what we do in our space, and different thinking. Has there been someone, and you've been able to collaborate with the legendary Coach Wooden and your husband and Bobby and what he did, but have you thought, Simone Biles in your recent collaboration, but has there been someone you thought, God, I'd love to connect or collaborate with them in any one of the passions in your life?
Absolutely. I love the psychologist Michael Gervais. He's got a podcast and I bring him in and speak to my class all the time. I love collaborating with the director that wrote and directed the Gold Over America tour. His name is Mark Swanhart. He goes by Swanee, but he just has a different gift than I have. But to be able to bring his vision to life through movement choreographically for this tour. I loved collaborating with, when I first got the job as the head coach, I called the other 3 head coaches around the country that had won national championships and who were consistently putting 10,000 people in their arenas. And that was Suzanne Yoffman at University of Georgia, Sarah Patterson at Alabama, and Greg Marsden at the University of Utah. And I just picked their brains constantly. I would love to collaborate with Brene Brown. I would love to collaborate with Jay Shetty. I would love to collaborate. You just name them, I'm there.
I love hearing that, and that's fascinating. So, you direct competitors, the people that you were going to compete against, you rang and asked how to create the success, and they were open to sharing.
100%. All three of them, literally, they opened their playbook to me. It was truly remarkable, and I do the same now. There's about 5 or 6 head coaches around the country that I'm mentoring, and they, I don't share each other's secrets, but it's like, yes. And that's why it's so funny. I just had a friend today tell me, are you ever going to slow down? I was like, no, I'm not. I will die, then I'll slow down. But I've had so much fun at what I've done, and I've made so many mistakes, and I've learned so much through it. And I'm a consistent learner and student of life and of leadership and all of that. I want to help as those people help me, my learning curve be shorter. I want to help somebody else's learning curve be shorter, if I can. And the collaborative part of humanity is, that's just what we all should be doing.
And you look back at what you achieved, developing champions in life through sport is as good a mission as you can. And I love the definition of success, redefining what success means. The trophies are there, the championships are there, but the impact on people's lives is such a great story to hear. And I'm sure many people will be empowered by what you've been able to share today. So thanks, Valerie. I really appreciate
Thank
you
you.
joining me.
And Luke, yes, I have a lot of trinkets. I have rings. I'm in the Hall of Fame. Blah blah blah. But that's because I worked at UCLA. That's because Coach Wooden always used to say, you can't win without talent. And so I was able to attract and recruit talent. But there are thousands of coaches that are just as fabulous and impactful and successful as I have been that don't have one ring. But that doesn't mean that they haven't been successful in helping young people develop into champions in life. And you don't need the ring to substantiate that. All you need truly is an athlete, a student at some point to be able to say thank you.
Great note to finish on. It's been a great privilege to spend some time here. Thanks, Valerie. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Luke, so much. I appreciate it.